Hi, this is Alex from Groovy Entertainment. Today we got another book on record to play for you. Today's book is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs from 1955. So let's get started.
Hi there, girls and boys. My name is Kay Landy, and I'm going to read you a story called Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Now open your book. The words say, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, specially adapted for this book and record. When you hear this sound, you turn the page. Ready? Turn the page. The words at the top of the page say, This is my wonder book, and there's a place to put your name. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Illustrations by Art Seiden. Let's begin to read the story together. Here we go. Turn the page. Once upon a time, a lovely little daughter was born to a queen. The child had skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony. She was named Snow White. A few years later, the queen died, and the king married again. The new queen was very proud and vain. She thought herself the most beautiful woman in the world. She had a magic mirror, and every day she would look into it and ask, Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of us all? And the mirror would reply, Thou art the fairest lady queen. Turn the page. But as Snow White grew up, she became more and more lovely. Soon she was more beautiful than the queen, her stepmother. One day, the queen stood as usual before her mirror and asked, Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of us all? This time the mirror answered, O Lady Queen, thou still art fair, but none to Snow White can compare. The stepmother queen flew into a rage. She called one of the king's huntsmen to her and said, Take Snow White out into the forest and kill her. But when they reached the forest, the huntsman could not bear to kill the lovely girl. Run away and hide, he said to Snow White. Turn the page. Snow White, left alone in the forest, wandered along until she came to a little cottage. She knocked at the door, and when there was no answer, she opened the door and went in. There she saw a little table neatly set with 7 little white cups and saucers. Along the wall, there were 7 little beds. They looked so inviting that Snow White lay down on one of the beds and fell sound asleep. Turn the page. This was the home of the 7 dwarfs, and soon they returned from the mountains. They saw Snow White asleep on the bed. How beautiful she is, they said, and they let her sleep there until morning. The next day, the 7 dwarfs crowded around Snow White. How did you get here? They asked. Snow White told the dwarfs about her wicked stepmother and how the huntsman had spared her life. Now with us?" asked the dwarfs. "You could sew and mend and keep everything tidy." This made Snow White very happy. "Oh, thank you," she said. "I could want nothing better." So she stayed and took care of the home of the 7 dwarfs. Turn the page. Now let's turn the record over and we will continue with the story. Don't forget to turn the page. Here we are on the second side of the record. Did you remember to turn the page? Good. Off in the palace, the stepmother thought that Snow White was dead. But one day she went to her mirror as usual and asked, "Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of us all?" The mirror answered, "O Lady Queen, thou still art fair, but none to Snow White can compare. Deep within the forest glen, she lives with 7 little men." The queen was furious. She decided to kill Snow White herself. Taking off her palace gown, she dressed herself as a peddler woman. Then she set out for the forest with a basket of fruit on her arm. In the basket was a fine rosy apple filled with magic poison. Turn the page. When she came to the cottage, the wicked stepmother found Snow White darning a little sock. The 7 dwarfs had warned Snow White not to let anybody in. But the apple the disguised queen offered to her looked so fresh and inviting that she reached out and took it. No sooner had she taken her first bite than she fell on the floor in a dead faint. The stepmother laughed as she hurried back through the woods. "Now I am the fairest in the land," she said to herself. It was a sad sight that met the dwarfs when they returned to the cottage. Their beloved Snow White was lying quiet and still on the floor. They wept, but try as they might, they could not bring her back to life. Turn the page. Snow White looked so beautiful that the dwarfs decided to place her in a glass case. One day, a handsome prince from a far country rode by. He looked at the lovely girl in the glass case and fell in love with her. He begged the dwarfs to let him take Snow White with him. The dwarfs gave their consent. As the prince lifted the case, the piece of poisoned apple fell out of Snow White's lips. She came to life again and sat up. "How did I get here? And who are you?" she said to the prince. The prince and the 7 dwarfs were overcome with joy. They told her all that had happened. Turn the page. Then the prince fell on his knees before Snow White. "Will you come with me and be my bride?" he asked. And so charming did he look that Snow White said, "Yes." Then Snow Snow White thanked the dwarfs for all that they had done for her and rode off with the prince. A great wedding feast was proclaimed. The palace was decked with brilliant lights, velvet drapes, and gorgeous flowers. Snow White's stepmother was among the people invited to the wedding. She did not know that Snow White was to be the prince's bride. Turn the page. After dressing herself in her finest clothes, the stepmother queen went to her mirror and asked, "Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of us all?" The mirror replied, she struck at the magic mirror, and as the mirror fell to the floor in fragments, the wicked stepmother fell dead. Never again would she be able to harm Snow White. Turn the page. The wedding feast was very gay, and the dancing and festivities lasted all through the night. And Snow White and the prince lived happily ever after. And Snow White and the prince lived happily ever after. Turn the page. And ever after.
So that was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs for 1955. So if you like, subscribe, share, and comment. And have a groovy day. We'll have another video coming out real soon. And our next book will be How Peter Cottontail Got His Name.